Hello everyone, Crash here, this RTA Motorsports, and today what we're going to be doing is reviewing the Samsung Odyssey Windows Mixed Reality headset. Here we go.
Welcome to RTA Motorsports.
Alright, so let's start off with some of the specs. I'm going to try to make this as much a review about this headset as possible, but a lot of you ask me questions regarding comparing it to other headsets because we've tried many different headsets, and I'm kind of like, I have my headsets all around me right now. So the first headset that we ever started off with was a DIY one that I glued together for a cell phone. We don't have that anymore. That was a piece of garbage. But then we moved up to this. This is the Mobo. It is basically a high-end cell phone VR headset. It has IPD adjustment, and you could also adjust how close and how far each lens is to you. It's basically the predecessor to Gear VR, essentially, and they have Zeiss lenses. I believe these were Zeiss lenses, and what I was doing was actually at the time I was using Vortex, kind of had that streaming to the cell phone from the computer. It was very crude, didn't work too well. From there we jumped to the Razer OS VR V1.5 headset. If you look at some of my really old videos, you can see me testing this. Didn't work too well as far as tracking goes, but cemented the fact that we wanted VR. Screen door effect by today's standards would not be acceptable by any means. And then we jumped to this. This is the Vive Pre. It's basically the same exact specs as the Vive, the consumer Vive. It's almost identical except for slight weight increase here, and the way the head strap mounts to it, everything is identical. The screen resolutions, the actual lenses, everything itself is identical to the normal Vive, but this is the Vive Pre. We also had the Oculus here, thanks to one of our good friends for a good month in the studio, but now we have the Samsung Odyssey, what this video is about. So let's start off with the specs. The specs here, you have dual 3.5 Super AMOLED displays. They run at a resolution of 1400 by 1600 per display, and in comparison to the HTC Vive Pro, for instance, they are also running Samsung displays that are 3.5 inch 1400 by 1600. I would guess to say that they are the exact same displays because Samsung's making most of the displays and most of these headsets that are for VR, but I cannot say definitely that they are the exact same displays, but similar specs, so can't argue that. For the Vive, we have dual 3.6 inch displays. They are AMOLED as well, and they're running at a resolution of 1080 by 1200 per display, so pretty sizable resolution bump there. The Samsung Odyssey also has Akg headphones on the sides. Bottom here you can see it has a volume rocker switch. There we go. It has dual microphones instead of the Vive's single microphone. IPD adjustment wheel here. It has a nose cup with nose flaps to try to eliminate any sort of light leakage. It has a sensor on the inside. I'm holding the headset upside down. That senses whether or not you're wearing the headset or not. It has a head strap that is a fixed head strap without the center band. So it's very closely related to the PlayStation VR's head strap design. On the back of the head strap design, you're going to notice that you have a ratcheting adjustment knob here. You can hear the ratchet mechanism. That itself also works on 110 degrees of field of view, which is something we've come to expect from most headsets nowadays. The Vive Pro as well as the Vive, and I believe the Oculus, all also have 110 degrees field of view. That's kind of just a moot point now. I know the Pimax 8K headset supposedly has like a 200 and something degree field of view. Also, a major difference here is going to be its mode of tracking. I believe most of you, if not all of you, probably already know that. This is kind of old news, but I need to go over it because it is a part of the headset. It uses these two front cameras for tracking, whereas the Vive, you can see with the silicone protector that we have on here, it actually accentuates all the tracking nodes on this headset. So the way that the Vive tracks is it has lighthouses that are emitting a laser grid over the room, and this is basically picking up on those points from the lighthouses and the headset is then determining its location in space. Its center camera here you could access from within Steam VR, and you could actually see what the camera sees through your headset in certain conditions. And the headset itself only has one microphone right under there. The Samsung Odyssey's dual cameras, although they are used for tracking, I haven't really figured out a way to access the cameras, nor do I really need to, but I'm sure there probably is a way, but I haven't been able to access them, especially to see inside the headset what's going on. I believe it's just specifically for tracking purposes. The rest of the front of the headset here, there's no IR emitters or anything like that. Now in room scale VR, I will say the Vive and the Oculus are better at tracking room scale, where the Vive is clearly the winner. The Samsung Odyssey, it does have some weak points, and that being when you occlude the cameras, and that also being when you put your face down on the floor. So I was using this in different titles like The Blue, which is a nice like scenic sort of environment to be in. I was also playing Super Hot. I was also playing Fruit Ninja. I was playing all the titles that typically everyone seems to play, and it worked flawlessly, except for some tracking issues when I was pushing it to its limits. Now, I put it on and I put my head straight down to the floor. I mean, straight down, and I touched the front of it, and it tracked all the way down to the floor, which was awesome. That it tracked all the way straight down to the floor and it tracked it accurately. But the moment I sat up, the cameras have to reconfigure, and basically the cameras are seeing your environment and they recognize your environment, and that's how they track, by looking at the environment. So the moment I sat up, it had to basically figure out where it was again. So the gyroscope saw that my head sat up, but it didn't get the height difference from me actually sitting up, the length of my torso. So when I sat up, the camera just did this. And it was a little bit, not nausea-inducing, but like, whoa, wait a minute. Oh, I could see what's going on. It didn't track my head position at current time. And it took about a second or two before it actually popped up to my correct height where I was sitting at. The cameras themselves also track the controllers. Now these controllers got a lot of flack for being very cheap feeling and being kind of horrible as far as they feel like garbage and whatnot. I don't know. To me, they feel fine. They feel just fine. They kind of feel like a mix between the Oculus touch controllers and the Vive controllers as far as durability goes. They are light like the Oculus touch controllers. They're not bad at all. I was using these and I actually thoroughly enjoyed them. They're not bad. The Oculus touch controllers are the most ergonomic out of the bunch, the Vive being the least ergonomic out of the bunch, including this one. But this one here, the one thing that I can honestly say that I could agree with is you have this halo that is being used for tracking that the cameras here will visualize and try to track. It may not take a good punch to the wall, these controllers here. Even though I did and they survived, I don't think that these controllers will survive too much like the Vive would. The Vive's controllers are pretty much like batons, but the point I'm trying to make is that this halo here, it tracks by visualizing this halo. If you have it behind your back for whatever reason, when you pull it out, although these have a wide field of view, much wider than our normal field of view, so the moment they see them, you're still not able to see your own hand anyway, and it's already tracking it. But the moment you get out of those cameras, it's not tracking it. So whatever you're doing, if you're trying to grab something that you know is behind you, if it's not being tracked, your hand's not moving. The gyroscope will move because it has an internal gyro, and the buttons will move, but as long as, you know, the 6 degrees of freedom in space, if it's not being visualized, it's not being tracked in space. But how does this resolution bump actually work in the cockpit? Let's check that out. Although you may see my mouth move in this video, something happened to the audio in OBS and the audio was actually corrupt. So I figured this would be as good a chance as any to show you what the microphones sound like in the Samsung Odyssey. So this is through the microphone array, the dual microphones in the Odyssey. Right now I'm going to give you my experiences that I'm experiencing right there. So when you first put on the headset, the first thing you're going to notice is the resolution bump.
The screens are absolutely gorgeous. The lenses don't have quite the amount of God rays that we experience with the Vive, and I read in reports that the Vive Pro has the same Fresnel lenses as the Vive, so they're experiencing the same amount of God rays there as well. We don't experience nowhere near as much of the God rays in this headset, which is actually very much appreciated, because when you go into very dark scenes with something bright in the middle, or if you're in a scene, if you're racing early in the morning with the early sun in its sunrise position, you don't get so much of that glaring God rays, and you could really appreciate the contrast a little bit more from the panel itself. It's not so distracting, even in menus like Project Cars in Steam VR, where the menus in the middle and around you is all dark. It's not so distracting, not so much God rays. Also, the resolution bump just really screams detail. It's really, really nice, and it really just implanted in my mind that I do not want to go back to the Vive or the Oculus resolution. Now, it is by no means perfect, and it's by no means a revolutionary bump, but more of an evolutionary bump. There is still a screen door effect. It is still going to be there for, I'm guessing, quite a few years until we could get to that near perfect human vision, but I think we are still pretty far off. But this resolution bump is not modest. It is not minute. It is actually pretty sizable when you put on the headset. You could actually see it, and it is really there. Now, when there are cars, you can see I'm turning left here. At the end of the straight, you could see that left turn there. I can see that there's cars there, and I can tell you if they're hitting the brake when I'm making that last left. I can tell you that there's cars all the way at the other end, and I can tell you that they're hitting their brakes, but I can't tell you what type of car there are. Now, in real life, if I'm standing at that left-hander all the way, that last left-hander, I probably still won't be able to tell you exactly what type of car there are either, but that's so you can get an idea as to what we're looking at here. Also, when we make this right-hander coming up here, all the way at the end of the track, at the other end where they're making left to go up the hill, I can tell you that there's cars there, but I can't exactly tell you what type of car there are either. The billboards, everything is pretty darn clear. I could see the brake markers a lot better. The dash displays is really where this is going to come alive. Now, some small text in some vehicles is still hard to read, like some small fine print like fuel or anything like that. But this car here has a very big dash display, and I could read pretty much everything on it crystal clear, where in the Vive it would be kind of hard to see. Project Cars 2 has some smaller little pop-ups that pop up messages that are vital. In this headset, I could read them, although they do still seem kind of small. In the Vive, I couldn't read them at all. Not a chance. Head strap design is actually pretty good. I really like it. You don't have that center strap in the middle that kind of creates the inverted mohawk or anything like that. I do find that I still sweat a lot, but I don't feel like my face is really being blasted with as much heat as what I experienced with my Vive. Doesn't feel as intense, but I do still sweat from the headset. The headset itself, when you put it on, I do feel like I'm fidgeting a little bit to get it perfectly comfortable every time, but only for about 15 seconds. I put it on and move it around a little bit, cinch it down, and then we're good to go. Whereas the Vive with that add-on head strap, it was very encompassing, almost like a hat. You put it on and you go. Not something I'm experiencing here, but this by no means is not uncomfortable, and I still prefer this method because we don't have that center strap that completely messes up your hair. The Akg headphones, although they are good, they are very good, I don't find them to be that much of a bigger difference from the Vive's add-on head strap headphones. They are AKG, which is a very premium company. They are very good headphones. I did listen to music through them. Sim racing sounds excellent. The car noises sound great. But it's not a humongous difference when you're coming from the Vive's add-on head strap. I have heard conflicting reports. Some people say the Vive Pro's headphones kind of sound a little tinny in comparison. These are better than the Vive's add-on head strap headphones, but not a humongous difference by no means. Just pretty comparable. I would say they would almost be in comparison to each other if they were competing headphones on a shelf. I would very much say that they would compete with one another, with these AKGs being a little bit better for what I prefer, a little bit more in the bass and a little bit higher treble. Mid-tones are very almost flatlined, but they are there. So lastly, how does the motion tracking work? Well, I am pleased to say it works really good. It's very comparable to what I experienced with the Vive or the Oculus. We're in the Prosimu T1000 3 degrees of freedom motion rig now, and you can see my rig moving around like crazy there. I do not experience any more motion or less motion. The motion tracking seems to work just as good as what it did with my Vive. I don't feel like I'm flying around the inside of the cockpit or anything like that. Now, if you have a very large rig, like a 6 degrees of freedom DIY motion rig, you are very familiar with the motion negation software a lot of people use for the Vive with the Vive controller. I don't know if you could use that yet with the Windows Mixed Reality headset. I never had to look into it. I don't feel I need it for my amount of motion. But at the current time, I have been having no tracking issues while in my motion rig. So +1 there for the Samsung Odyssey.
All right, we're back with the Blue Yeti microphone. Now, this is an iRacing Rallycross replay that we are recording directly through the lenses. You can see that Fresnel lens is very apparent, as well as you're going to notice that screen door effect. I want you to pay attention to the shift light indicator as well as the billboards in the distance. You could definitely tell when you look at those, the screen door effect, as well as how big that sweet spot is in the middle. That sweet spot's quite a bit larger on the Odyssey than it is in the Vive as far as what I experienced. And you could definitely see that here, whereas the shift light indicator, once it goes towards periphery, starts blurring out, where in the Odyssey it stays pretty clear, so that way you can move your eyes around a lot more naturally while you're racing. Here's a downward shot of the gauge cluster in the Rallycross card. Pay attention to the fire button as well as the E on top. For some reason, the E on top on the Vive is really washed out, and you really get to see that screen door effect. Also, that door panel on the right, although it's not in the Vive shot, you could start to see the carbon fiber effect that I couldn't see in the Vive. In the Vive here, this upward shot, you could definitely see the screen door effect towards the right side of the screen there. That is not apparent in the Odyssey. Definitely look at those billboards, and you could pretty much tell that the Odyssey does have a lot more of a clearer experience.
So all in all, what do I think about the Samsung Odyssey? Well, the Odyssey is an awesome headset. It is what I was hoping for, but not more necessarily. The room scale tracking is good, is acceptable, but is not as good as the Vive. It could be an issue for some, but if you're just sim racing like us, or if you're just doing simulation type stuff like air flight simulation or anything like that, it should be acceptable. It's acceptable to me. The increase in resolution bump feels like a veil has come off your eyes, and you have noticed that things are a lot clearer looking. And you notice, especially in VR based titles, that there are some things that they tried to hide behind the actual screen door effect that they can't get away with now, and you're noticing like texture issues that weren't there before. But in the means of sim racing, looking at cars in the distance is still kind of an issue. Yeah, I cannot tell you, especially at Mazda Raceway Laguna Seca, at the end of a long straight, I can't tell you what car that pretty much is. I can tell you that they're hitting their brakes or not, and I can tell you that there is cars there and how many there are, but I can't quite tell you what type of vehicle that is. An issue with just the screen resolution. We're not there yet, and I think it's probably going to take 8 or 12K before we actually get closer to human vision. I mean, this is only a moderate bump in resolution, and do not expect to not see the screen door effect. The screen door effect is still there. It's just very much minimalized. And that only helps with basically immersion. And that's the one biggest thing I could say, is that the black levels in this headset are absolutely phenomenal. The increase in resolution is phenomenal, although not, you know, groundbreaking, not world shaking of a difference. It is a good sizable resolution bump, and the fact that my computer doesn't seem to take that much of an impact difference between the two headsets, it just feels like an awesome experience. Every time I go back to the Vive, I do see the screen door effect, and it is there, but now that I have the choice, I don't want to go back. and that is a pretty strong statement. When you get to those other bigger resolution gaps, when we get to actual 8K in the headset, native 8K or native 12K, we're going to need hardware that's really going to be able to push it, and we're going to need hardware for the masses. Most people are going to be able to have that level of hardware, like as if today's 1060 graphics cards on up are going to be able to push that kind of resolution. And you can kind of get an idea, we're probably about 4 to 5 years, my guess, away from that point where that's going to start becoming a news item and that's going to start becoming a thing. I just don't think we're there yet. And I think for today's technology, for the way things are working, and for the way the software works and how I'm actually getting pretty decent performance out of this darn headset, I'm impressed. I am really impressed. It does feel like a veil has come off your eyes when you have used a Vive or an Oculus for a while and then you come to this headset. The resolution bump is profound, but it's not the total visual quality experience that you're probably hoping for, where the screen door effect is gone, because it is still there. So again, I'm Crash, this is RTA Motorsports. Hopefully that was clear enough. And if you have any other questions, please leave them in the comment box below. I'll be glad to answer them. See you all next time. Hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. Lets me know you like this content and you want to see more. See you all next time.